There's a story I'd like to tell, just to see if I can get it off my mind, called the Battle of the Birds. Now, the Battle of the Birds originally came to us through the oral tradition, and it was originally written down by Hector Urquhart, who was a gamekeeper on the west coast. And he heard it of a man called John Mackenzie, who heard it in his youth from his granny. Now, that was back in 1859, it got written down, so we've certainly got records of it being at least hundreds of years old. But the themes in it go right back to when paganism and Christianity were butting heads in Scotland. And it's quite hard to kind of figure out what it's about. I think maybe that's why I've been wrestling with it so much this week. It's the Battle of the Birds. Long ago, there was a great war between all the animals in Scotland to see who would rule. And in the final battle, the Lord of Men sent his son to go see who would win and who would be ruling with. Now his son got there right at the final moments of the final battle and found that the last two animals fighting were the great raven and the serpent. The serpent had its coils wrapped around the raven, and the raven had its beak firmly pinching the throat of the serpent. It looked like the serpent was going to win, and so the boy used his dagger to cut off the head of the snake. The snake fell to the ground, and the bird looked up at the boy. "Thank you," said the bird, "and for your deed of bravery and kindness, I'll give you the gift of sight. Take hold of the root of my ring." And so the boy took hold of the root of the raven's wing, and they flew over 6 bens and 6 glens and 6 mountain moors, and they alighted by a cottage. "In the cottage you'll find one of my sisters," says the raven. "Tell her you're at the Battle of the Birds, and tell her that you saw one like me." The boy did as the raven bid. He went into the cottage and received hospitality. He was given meat of all meat and drink of all drink, and warm water for his feet, and a soft bed for his tired limbs. The next morning at dawn he met the raven. "Take hold of the root of my wing," said the raven. And together they flew over 3 bens and 3 glens and 3 mountain moors, and alighted near a bothy. "Go into the bothy," said the raven, "and look after yourself for the night, and I'll see you in the morning." The young prince did so. In the bothy he was able to find himself meat, and in the bothy he was able to find himself drink. He created a fire and had warm water for his feet and soft bed for his tired limbs. And in the morning he met to where he suspected to meet the raven, and instead he met a boy. He was the most beautiful golden-haired boy you'd ever see. He was carrying a bundle. "Who are you?" asked the boy. "I am the raven," said the other boy. "And to thank you for everything you've done, I've given you this bundle." "How is it you've become a boy?" asked the prince. "Well," said the boy, "I was the raven. In being with you on this journey, I was able to become my true self and break the spell upon me. And for that I give you thanks." Now the prince walked away with this bundle, with the raven's parting word still in his mind, that he should not open the bundle until he was at the place his heart most desired to live for the rest of his life. And he walked away from the raven. He walked over 3 bens and 3 glens and 3 mountain moors, and took hospitality at the raven's sister once more. The next day he carried on, over 6 bens and 6 glens and 6 mountain moors, until he was in a dark hollow in a dank glen, far away from home. The bundle became exceptionally heavy, and the prince was struggling to carry it, so he decided to have a peep inside and see what was there. And lo and behold, inside the bundle there was a castle, with great tall turrets and orchards, a moat. You could smell the baking bread and the sound of laughter. And as he looked, it seemed to get bigger and heavier and heavier, until it was bigger than him, and it was expanding out of the bundle. He couldn't get it back in. He did not want to keep his castle here in this dark glen. And he was panicking and he was shouting and trying to get the castle back into the bundle so he could take it to his favourite place in all the world. "Oh," said a giant who had heard all the kerfuffle. "This is no place for a castle boy." "I can't get it back in," said the prince. "I will put it back in for you," said the giant, "in exchange for your eldest son on his 7th birthday." "A deal, it's a deal," said the prince. He couldn't believe his luck. Was he even going to have a son? And with that, the giant pulled the 4 corners of the bundle and tightened it shut, reducing the castle into a carryable bundle, and he gave it back to the boy. Now the boy carried on further until he came to a beautiful green hall near where his father's castle was, and he decided this was the perfect place to spend the rest of his life. He opened up his bundle, and the 4 corners spread out wide, and the castle rose far above his head. The orchards sprung up, and the horses bayed, and the smell of baking was the air, and the sound of laughter. The doors opened to him, and he saw a very beautiful woman. "If you marry me, this castle you'll have, and the king you will one day be," said the woman. "Gladly," said the young prince, and he married her. The years went by, and, well, our prince became the king. And the raven was king of the birds, and all other beasts. And our king had a son with his new wife. And then 6 long years passed until the son's 7th birthday. "What oh?" said one of the guards as a giant came across to the castle. He alerted the king, and suddenly the king remembered the deal he made as a boy to this giant. "Ah," he says, and he quickly told his wife, for he had completely forgotten until this moment. The wife hurried the boy away, and the giant bellowed up to the castle, "Give me your son, as per our promise." "Just a moment," said the king. His wife took hold of the page boy. "This boy will do. He looks about the same age as our son," and they dressed him up in the prince's royal robes and sent him out with the giant. Now, when the giant was on the road with his page boy disguised as the prince, he took out a rod and handed it to the boy. "What would your father do with a rod like this?" "My father would use to smack the cats and dogs that tried to eat the king's supper," said the page boy. "You are not the king's son," and he took the boy and dashed his brains out against a wall. He marched back to the castle, furious at the trickery. "Give me the prince," said the giant. "One moment," said the king, and with that, his wife took the butler's son. "He is about the same age," she said, and she dressed him up in the prince's royal attire and handed him over to the giant. When the giant was out there on the road, he took a rod out. "What would you do with this rod?" he asked the butler's boy. "I would use this rod to smack away at all the cats and dogs as they tried to disturb the king's peace," said the boy. "You are not the prince," said the giant, and he dashed out the boy's brains. He came back to the castle a 3rd time, irate with anger. "Give me the prince," said the giant. The jig was up, and they handed the prince over, for the giant would have made the foundations of the castle their tallest blocks and killed them all. And the giant took the prince away, and he raised him as his own for 10 long years, teaching him all the wisdom there is to know about the world. And one day, after his long education with the giant, the prince heard the most beautiful music he'd ever heard. He was now a young man, and had never heard such music before. So he crept along until he could find the music, and lo and behold, he found the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen, singing the song. "Who are you?" he asks the woman. "I am one of the giant's daughters," she says. "Tomorrow, the giant will try and marry you off to the daughter of the Green King. You mustn't let him if you wish to escape with me." "Okay," said the boy. The next day, the giant fetched the child and took him to a grand court full of great people. Here, boy, said the giant, I have got you a wife, and he presented the Lady Green. Now, the boy heeded what he had been told the last night and scouted out for this woman. And he saw her tucked away in a corner. Her! I would like to marry her, he says. The giant roars with rage at the outrage. If you wish to marry her, says the giant, you must clean out my brae. Brae, says the boy. Aye, says the giant. Turns out the giant had a massive bay full of all the cattle of the land, and it hadn't been cleaned out for near 7 years. It was absolutely full of cow poo and straw, so deep many had drowned in it. Clean this out by dusk, said the giant, and you may marry my daughter. Now the boy set to work, and he cleaned, and he cleaned, and he shoveled, and he shoveled, and he swept, and he swept, and he wiped, and he wiped, until by midday he was near passed out with the exhaustion. Now the giant's daughter came to talk with him. My darling, you are exhausted, she said. Aye, I am, says the boy, almost on his knees with tiredness. Take a rest for a moment, and we'll carry on, says the daughter. Grateful for the rest, the boy bends down to his knee, and before he knows it, he's passed out with exhaustion. When he awakes, the sun's about to set, and the brae has been completely cleaned. You could roll a golden apple from its top to its tail, and you would never know. It was amazing. The giant came and found him. My brae, he says, it was not cleaned by you, boy. It was cleaned by someone, and it wasn't you, says the boy. The giant is gruff with him. Tomorrow I wish you to thatch the brae with feathers from all the birds of the land. None two feathers may be the same colour. And with that, the giant marched away. The boy, the next morning, took his bow out into the hill and was trying to shoot at the birds. He only caught 2 blackbirds, and he was despairing that all those birds were all his feathers were currently the same colour. And he was near on his knees with the exhaustion of the hunt when the giant's daughter found him. My brave, brave knight, take a rest, she said in a soothing voice. She sung him a sweet song while stroking his forehead, and he passed out. When he awoke, the sun was setting, and he ran to the brae to see how much he had able to do before, and then, what? It's already been done. He came to find that the brae had been completely rethatched with the most colourful feathers he'd ever seen in the land. The giant found him there, starstruck by this event. You did not do this, said the giant. No, said the boy, shaking with fear but with defiance in his voice, but neither did you. The giant was gruff with him. Tomorrow morning, I want you to climb to the magpie's nest on the top of the great fir, for I wish to have its 5 eggs for breakfast. So be it, says the boy, and after that I will marry your daughter. Indeed, says the giant. The next morning, the boy finds the fir. It is unmistakable. It's by far the tallest in the whole forest, at least by 500 feet. And right at the top, there was the magpie's nest. Now he's walking up and down the tree, round the tree, desperately trying to find a way up. My gallant sir, she says, there's only one way you can get to the top. How, says the boy with despair. You must kill me, she says, and take my bones, use them as a ladder to climb up into the branches. Then, when you're done, return all of my bones back to where you found them, in my body, and I shall be okay. I cannot kill you, says the boy, after everything you've done for me. It's the only way, she says. If you love me, and you love your freedom, you must kill me. So the boy begrudgingly takes his dirk out and slits her throat. In carving her body up, he is able to make a ladder from her bones to send the tree up into the branches. He climbs carefully up and takes the 5 eggs, and as he climbs down, he takes all the bones he can and lays them back into the body. All except one, for the girl springs up and she's raging at him. How could you forget my wee pinky finger up in the tree? Ah, said the boy. I'll be lame for life, she says. Now, the giant comes and sees that he's got the 5 eggs. Oh, you've done it, he says. And he takes the eggs and he has his breakfast. Now, says the giant, choose your wife. And with that, he presents his 3 daughters, and they're all dressed the same and they all look the same. And, well, the young prince couldn't tell who his was. Who was his? And he looks them in the eye and he can't tell. And he looks them by the hair and he can't tell. Until he looks at their hands and realizes that one is missing. A little pinky finger. This one, says the boy. And the giant roars with anger and laughter. Ah, yes, I guess. Your aim was true this time, boy, says the giant. And so the boy weds her. In the giant's court, surrounded by the great people of the realm. And at that night, after the festivities are done and they're laying to bed, suddenly there's a change in the wind. They both sense it. The giant's daughter turns to the man and says, My prince, we must fly or else the giant will eat you and me, for he cannot have this treachery against him. And with that they ran to the stable, and as they did so, she cut up an apple into 5 segments and hid them, 2 in the bed, 2 in the corridor, and 1 in the stable. And they rode off on the giant's quickest steed. Now as the giant arose, he shouted, Where is my daughter? In bed, said one of the apple slices. And the daughter's voice emulated the giant, and he ran to the bedroom and opened the sheets, and lo and behold, there was no daughter, just 2 apple slices. Where is my daughter? Shouts the giant, and his voice comes back from the corridor. She's in the corridor. And he runs to the corridor, only to find an apple slice has deceived him. Where is my daughter? Shouts the giant. She is in the stable, shouts one of the apple cores. And he runs over to the stable to find that he has been deceived yet again by the apples. White with anger, he chases after them. Right through the night and into the day and the dawn's break, he's running after them. Now the giant's daughter can feel the giant's hot breath on her back. My prince, she shouts, reach into the ear of the horse and pull out whoever you find and fling it over your shoulder, for it may waylay my father. The prince pulls out a hawthorn branch from the ear of the horse and throws it over his shoulder. And as it strikes the ground, it turns into a great tangled forest of hawthorn that not even a weasel could weasel through. The giant gets caught up in the hawthorn and it draws his blood as he scratches his face and hands trying to get through. No matter, shouts the giant, and he runs back to his castle and receives his great axe and his great hunting knife, and with that he cuts down the forest. As he gets through to the end of the forest, he throws the axe down, ready to chase after, and a woody calls, If you leave him, we'll steal him, he shouts. The giant, with rage, decides that it's best not to have his favourite axe stolen and takes it back to his castle. Then he runs on through the woods and chasing after R2. My prince, I feel my father's hot breath against my back, shouts the maiden. Reach into the horse's ear and see what you can pull out. With that, the boy pulls out a small pebble of granite, and he throws over his shoulder to create a huge range of mountains that are now the Caedem Gorm, stretching out to block the giant's way. The giant is enraged, and he runs back to his castle to grab his hammer, and he comes back and he smashes the mountains to smithereens, creating a valley that the river runs through in boulders at the bottom of the crag. And as he drops his hammer and to run after his daughter and her prince, the woody shouts, If you leave him, you'll lose him. Ah, to be damned with it, take them if you will, said the giant, and he runs off after them. My prince, once again shouts the maiden, I feel my father's hot breath against my neck. Reach into the horse's ear and see what you can find. With that, the prince finds a flask of water and throws it over his shoulder, and it creates a great lake, long and deep, and the giant runs headlong into it. He sinks straight to the bottom due to his great weight and the weight of his axe, and he drowns. And that is the end of the giant. And that is the last of the giant hassles are two. With that, the prince and his wife are easily able to make it back to his father's palace. And as they are about to enter, his wife takes his prince's hand. My prince, she says, you must remember not to be kissed by anyone, for if you do, you'll forget me, and you'll be once again folded into the arms of your family without me. On my word, says the prince as he steps in. Everyone is overjoyed to hear him, but he begs them not to kiss him. And he sees his mother and father, and again he begs them not to kiss him. And he is able to come into the palace without breaking his promise to be kissed until one of the greyhounds jumps up and licks him right across the face. And with that fond hound's kiss, he forgets his wife, and he becomes the prince that he once was before, a child again. Now the wife is grieved, for a prince has deserted her and not come home. So she takes up residence by a well, long and deep, and sits in the trees over it, lying in the branches for a day and a night. The next day, the wife of a shoemaker comes, and she reaches into the well to go get some water. And as she looks down, she sees the reflection of the giant's daughter and thinks, if that's what I look like, I'm too beautiful to draw water. And she goes back to the shoemaker. Where's my drink? Says the shoemaker. Get it yourself, says the wife. I am too beautiful to be drawing water. Ach, says the shoemaker. She's gone bally. Go on, lass, he says to his daughter. Go get some water. So the shoemaker's daughter goes, and she goes to the well, and she collects some water. And as she's looking down into the water, she sees the reflection of the giant's daughter. Oh, if I am this beautiful, who am I to be told by my father to go collect water? I should go find the prince. And she runs back to her father. Where's the water? Says the shoemaker. Get it yourself, says his daughter. My women have gone mad, says the shoemaker. I'll go get it myself. And he goes to the well, and he looks into the water, and he sees the reflection of the giant's daughter. Who are you? He shouts, turning around to look up at the tree. For of course it's not his reflection. The daughter jumps down, and she tells him her story. And in fact, she doesn't tell just him her story, but the story of all the stories that come before her, and the stories to come. And the shoemaker is so entranced with her storytelling and her beauty that he says she may stay with him in his house with his wife and his daughter. So she lives with the shoemaker for many years until the young prince becomes a man again. 10 years, in fact. And in that time, many of the local men tried to woo the daughter, for she was very beautiful. One time, a man came to woo her, and he got his foot stuck on the floor through her magic powers, and he couldn't get it unstuck till the morning and had to run home in shame. Another man got his hand stuck on the doorknob and couldn't get it unstuck till near the morning and had to run home in shame. But the giant's daughter was sad, for she loved the prince, and she waited until he grew up again. When he grew up, he decided to get married, but not to her. Please, she said to the shoemaker, take me to the wedding, for it's very important to me. All right, said the shoemaker, for he learnt to trust the giant's daughter, more so than his own instincts. So he attended the great wedding with the giant's daughter, and there stood the prince, roaming past with his new, beautiful bride. The giant's daughter stepped out. Stop, she said. Before you must marry, you must drink, she said to the prince. The prince was a bit confused. Who was this very beautiful but rather crazy lady offering him a drink? But he decided to be gracious, and he took the drink. He took the glass in his hand, and before he could take the drink of the wine, a golden and silver dove flew out. Grains scattered on the floor, and the golden dove went down and ate all the grains. The silver dove chirped at the golden dove. "How can you eat my share after all I've done for you?" says the silver dove to the gold dove. Once again, the prince tries to take a drink, and two doves fall out before he can take the drink. Grain scatter along the ground, and the golden dove goes to eat all the grains before the silver dove can get in, and the silver dove reproaches him, saying, "After all the adventures we were on, chased by my father, how could you possibly eat all the grains?" And with that, the prince realized what was going on. He remembered who the giant's daughter was. This beautiful woman stood in front of him. He remembered his deep history and the history of his father and his father before him. He suddenly realized the history of his son and the son to come after him. He realized the history of Scotland and Scotland's future, and how the raven was so closely tied to his family that it became his family emblem. Rejoiced at this knowledge, the boy took his wife, for he was already married, of course, to this woman. "Thank you, my darling," he says. And that's it. I'm afraid this story does end happily. And the reason it ends happily is because it's not just the linear narrative I've been able to tell you now. It's much more to do with the mind of the child that grew up and had to grow up again and had to remember his past and his future. And only when you can remember your past and only remember your future can you understand your present. And that is when you can marry the giant's daughter.